Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome to MST.TV. This is Nishi here, bringing you all another Market Watch episode. So we're in a little bit of a weird place right now, right? We're still seeing buyouts, but most of them are around collector's items like ghost rares, jump promos, starlight rares, that kind of stuff. Even though I could go over those, I feel like there's not really a point in just saying, X card was bought out, here's the price, and that's kind of it. That's not really an interesting conversation to me. But as far as the meta goes, I feel like the meta has kind of developed quite a bit over the last month or so, and we're seeing kind of like the calm before the storm right now. We're waiting to see what happens with the ban list and the next couple of sets that's going to influence the meta and therefore the market. So because of this, we haven't seen too many buyouts of new techs or anything like that. But there have been a couple of interesting ideas floating around, so those are the things we're going to be talking about in today's Market Watch. Let's get started. Alright, so the first card we're going to talk about here is tuning. So tuning has actually become a really important card in the meta right now because it can search for either Quickdraw Synchron or Jet Synchron in those Synchro Eldritch decks. Jet Synchron is a huge one card starter for the deck, so the fact that you can run an extra way to search out that card so easily is really solid. Now unfortunately, holo versions of tuning are quite expensive right now, largely because it was first printed in Starstrike Blast. For the ultimate rares, you're looking at around $120 a piece, and even for the ultras, you're looking at $40 each. Now remember that because the card is from Starstrike Blast, there's only first edition printings for the ultimate and ultra rare, no unlimited versions. Now even for the super rares, they're still running around $3 to $4 a piece, despite being a special edition promo. Fortunately, this card was reprinted in Legendary Duelist Magical Hero as a common, so if you're okay with playing those lower rarities, at least you have the card readily available for you. Now, if you saw my ban list prediction video, you know that I think that Jet Synchron is going to be banned on the upcoming ban list, which will negatively affect the price of tuning. So if you have these expensive higher rarities, I would personally recommend selling them sooner rather than later, just to play around that ban list risk. So next up we have Quickdraw Synchron, which is actually one of the cards that you can search off of tuning. So Quickdraw isn't something that's seeing play in every single Synchro Eldritch build, rather it's an option that some builds are running so that there's an alternative search target with tuning if say you already opened with your copy of Jet Synchron. Its primary use is to combine it with something like TG Hyper Librarian because Quickdraw Synchron is a tuner, so you can make Ultimaya Telkin and summon out Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon fairly easily. Again, this isn't something that every single build is running, it's more of just like a personal tech option or your own preference on how you build the deck. Anyways, there are a couple of different higher rarities of Quickdraw Synchron that we should be paying attention to. Turbo Pack Supers are actually the most expensive at around $30 each. The DT copies are actually fairly affordable at only around $6 each. The Duelist League colored rares are around $12 each, and the Ultras from Legendary Collection 5Ds are around $13 a piece. So yeah, whatever rarities you guys feel like you want to play is probably fine. In terms of cost, I think that the DT option is fairly affordable right now, and I think it could trend upwards towards that $10 to $15 mark, maybe within the next couple of weeks or so. Now this card is pretty unlikely to be hit by the ban list or anything like that, though we do want to consider the possibility that maybe it will see more play in the future if Jet Synchron were to get banned. Okay, so speaking of Ultimaya Telkin, we did see a pretty significant bump up in the price of the Jump Ultra Rare version. This is actually the second time that we've seen it bump up like this. The first time was back when the Master Rule changes were first announced, and this is kind of like a secondary bump because it's being validated by the fact that this card is actually seeing play in the meta. So this card is the main reason that some Synchro Eldritch builds are opting to run Quickdraw Synchron, as you can make it with Quickdraw and Hyper Librarian, set one of your spells or traps, and then bring out Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon from your extra deck for free. Really interesting strategy, and I'm actually kind of surprised that we haven't seen more from Ultimaya Telkin ever since the Master Rule change. It's easily one of the more abusable cards in the game now. Anyways, with all of the price jumps in the prices of Shonen Jump promo cards, the Jump Ultra version of Ultimaya Telkin is now all the way up at $38 a piece, and even the super rare reprints have stayed pretty steady at around the $3 mark. What is worth noting though is that this card is actually getting a common reprint in the upcoming OTS Tournament Pack 13, so you should be able to grab it for less than $1 or so at your locals whenever they do open up. However, I think that as an original Jump promo, there's a very solid chance that the ultra rare Ultimaya Telkin is going to retain some value, as it's a really strong card that I think will continue to see play in the future. So if you are wanting to play some of your extra deck cards in nicer rarities, this is definitely a card that I would consider grabbing. Next up, let's look at Token Collector, which is a spicy tech that we've seen from a bunch of side decks over the last couple of weeks from online tournament results. This card is primarily used against Synchro Eldritch, or really any sort of combo deck that attempts to generate tokens and abuse them with Olion, Auroradon, and Linkross. Ideally, I think that you drop it on the Auroradon, since after that they are unable to link summon for the rest of the turn, which is cool. It's like a mini hand trap, so you can drop it when your opponent is going first, and its effect can be activated to summon it out of either your hand or the graveyard. Now, I don't know if this is going to be a side deck staple moving forward. On one hand, it feels like it's specifically chosen to target Synchro Eldritch, right, as the main abuser of this combo, but on the other hand, the combo is so powerful, I definitely think that we could start to see it move on to see play in other strategies moving forward, which would just increase the usefulness of this card as a side deck option. So it's the ultra rare versions of Token Collector that were bought out. They were sneak peek promo cards from way back in Soul Fusion, and they're currently about $3 to $4 a piece, though they may be a little bit difficult to find because it is an older card, and a lot of players were only able to grab the one copy. Alternatively, I would recommend picking up the rares from the original set, or the commons from the 2019 Megatins, as you should be able to grab them for less than $0.25 a piece, just to have the option available to you. So let's now take a look at Artorius, King of the Noble Knights. Now this card is starting to bump up in price all across the board. The ultimate rares jumped up really high. They're now only around $30 each, though they were as high as like $70 a piece at one point. However, even the lower rarities, the ultra and the platinum rare, you're looking at around $3 each, lowest on TCG Player. I actually feel like this card was a really poorly chosen buyout target and was bought out without people doing their research properly when looking into the future. I can only assume that this buyout was because of all of the attention that the Flame Noble Knight deck is getting in the OCG, as it's one of the top decks over there alongside Dragma, Orcust, and Eldritch. However, I believe that picking this card up is a pretty big mistake. From looking at the various Noble Knight builds that we've seen do well online in the OCG, I think almost every single build that I've actually looked at doesn't play Artorius at all. They run exclusively Synchro and Link monsters. Now that's not to say this card won't see play here. It could be an interesting tech here potentially, maybe as a way to help the deck fight against back row decks or something like that. But I definitely think that this card is overhyped for what it is, especially given the lack of foundation in the OCG. It's a card that I would be looking to move as soon as possible before people realize that it just isn't that great of an option in the Flame Noble Knight deck. Tenyi Spirit Adhara is an interesting card that is starting to pick up a lot of people's attention. So this is a level 1 tuner monster that you can summon to the field for free if you control no effect monsters, so it can be a really solid card to open with. As a tuner, it makes going into Needle Fiber a lot easier, and as an earth monster, it's something that can be banished later on in the turn or later in the game for either Gigantus or Block Dragon in Adamancipators. I believe it did actually see some play in a couple of top Adamancipator deck lists over the past few weekends actually. Anywho, the super rares are now a whole $6 a piece each, which isn't too bad, especially considering that they came out in a very recent OTS tournament pack. In fact, even the rares are up at around $2 to $3 a piece, which isn't that bad at all for a rare. Also keep in mind that it could be reprinted in the 2020 Megatins as a holo, so don't go too crazy for this card, especially now. It's definitely something that I think is worth digging out of your bulk that could have been very easily overlooked in the past, so that you can move your copies for a few bucks now while you can. So the next card here is Garden Rose Maiden. So a while ago we talked about how secret rare Black Gardens were fairly expensive, and Garden Rose Maiden is a card that searches Black Garden directly from the deck on summon. As a generic level 5 Synchro monster, it can be made in place of TG Hyper Librarian or Excel Synchron as an intermediary combo piece. I did see some people talking online about how Garden Rose Maiden and Black Garden help facilitate turning Jet Synchron into a one-card True King of All Calamities, which sounds really cool. This means that it can be an interesting route to take in Synchro Eldritch, which theoretically have a lot of room for different cards in their extra deck. What makes this card annoying to find is that it's from Legendary Duelist Sisters of the Rose, a set that wasn't really all that great and therefore wasn't heavily opened. It has a few good cards in it like Serenade Dance and Lieb, but overall it wasn't a really high impact set, so there's probably not too many copies of this card floating around on the market, and it's up at around the $22 mark. It also probably isn't going to be reprinted printed in Legendary Duelist Season 1, so it might not show up until maybe 2021 in a similar product for that year. So if you think that this is a combo piece that you're going to want to run in a number of your decks moving forward, you might just have to suck it up and grab your copy now. An interesting card that popped up on my Facebook newsfeed yesterday was Queen of Thorns, which seems like a really interesting card. This is a plant synchro monster that requires a tuner and a plant non-tuner to make, and it forces both players to pay 1000 life points if they want to normal summon or special summon a non-plant monster from their hand. Now, I think this card definitely could be interesting as an extra deck option against the meta. In addition to normal summons, it technically hinders and makes more costly to use the Adamancipator tuners, Eldritch's own summon effect, or cards like Abyss Megalo, Abyss Tias, and Mulan Glacia. Especially if they happen to be running something like Solemn Judgment, they could definitely run out of life points really quickly. The problem I have though is what deck is actually going to be able to make and abuse this card, as I can't think of any generic plant cards that are currently being used in the game right now. My best guess is that this is something being abused by Rika, but I don't know if that's really a great option there either. Anyways, there are only 2 printings of this card available. The super rares are up to $13 a piece. I think it's like $20 a piece for super first eds, and even the common reprints from Astral Pack 5 are $6 or $7 a piece, with very few quantities on market. If you guys do know for sure exactly why this card was bought out, please leave a comment down below and let me know. Alright guys, one last card I do want to talk about here is Decode Taker. Now this isn't exactly seeing any sort of meta play. I think it did like maybe half a year ago for a little bit. Definitely nothing recent. However, despite that, the card was bought out about a week ago and it hit like the $100 mark, but it has since then cooled down a lot, down to around the $28 to $30 mark that it is currently at. Now this is one of those cards that I typically don't enjoy talking about, right? Because it was basically bought out for no reason other than the fact that it's a high rarity card that people thought they could inflate the price of. However, I think it is worth bringing this card to people's attention because of the fact that it is an ace monster from the television show and that it is likely to continue to bring some attention to this card over time. I'm not saying that this card is worth $20 or $50 or anything like that, but what I am saying is that we're very likely to see buyouts of this card happen again in the future as one of the more iconic cards from the Link Vrains era in a tournament exclusive pack. Alright guys, that is it for today's episode. Not too much exciting stuff that we're talking about here today. No one really discovering too many crazy new techs and buying those cards out. I'm actually really personally looking forward to the upcoming ban list changes because I think ban lists are really fun and they shake things up a lot, not just the meta, but with the market as well. And I'm also looking forward to seeing what reprints we get in sets like Toon Chaos and Battles of Legend Armageddon. Anyways guys, please do me a favor, if you enjoyed today's Market Watch episode, please hit that thumbs up button for me, and as always, leave a comment in the comment section down below. Let me know what else is going on in the market that I may have missed so that I can potentially cover it in a future video and keep all of you guys as viewers as informed as possible. And of course, if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button to get all of the latest and greatest content from both Tombox and myself here on the channel. And until next time guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.